these underlying fundamentals of all life have come into question, even in academic discourse. How did that even happen, and how seriously should we take it?
It's so absurd. If ever I have a doctor who gives me a full physical examination and then asks me what sex I am, I'd ask for another doctor or ask for a more thorough examination. For doctors to be taught this nonsense is really very sad.
How should we understand it then? Is it a disorder? Is it a psychological condition? Is it just a fashion of society?
It's clearly a fashion, and no doubt about that. I mean, there may be a disorder underlining it, but what's happening at the moment is a vogue, a craze.
Hello and welcome back to UnHerd. In recent years, there has been something of a philosophical confusion going on around the question of sex and gender. The question has become fashionable to ask whether sex is even real as a distinction. Is it a binary, or is it some kind of spectrum between male and female? Can you say that men are different fundamentally, intrinsically from women, or that males are different from females? What is gender as opposed to sex? We've all gone round in circles on this, and recently I was looking at a new book that is coming out this week called The War on Science, edited by Lawrence Krauss, who we had on the show recently, and it's by none other than world-famous biologist and thinker and writer Richard Dawkins, and in it he lays out the difference between males and females and what the biological basis for the sex binary actually is. And I'm happy to say we persuaded him to come into the studio and lay it out for us, because that clarity is a rare thing, and I thought it would be incredibly useful for everyone just to have it set out for us. So Richard, welcome to UnHerd.
Thank you.
We're briefly interrupting the show for a word from our sponsor. Some struggle to fall asleep, others to stay asleep, and many wake in the night with racing thoughts. I often wake up in the middle of the night tossing and turning for what feels like hours. I found out that saffron is more than just a spice. It's shown in multiple human studies to help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up refreshed without next day grogginess. It works by boosting natural melatonin without dependency or morning fog, calming the nervous system, helping your mind unwind, improving mood and stress resilience so you wake up feeling better. Most saffron supplements don't work because they contain cheap, unstandardized saffron cut with fillers or low-potency extracts, delivering weak, inconsistent doses. Unlike today's sponsor, Verso, whose Evening Being is a melatonin-free drink mix perfected over 3 years with a clinically studied trademark saffron, standardized and concentrated to only the active ingredients, proven to enhance sleep, mood and relaxation. It's the most researched bioavailable saffron extract available. It's paired with other clinically studied, patented ingredients to help promote relaxation and deep, uninterrupted sleep. After taking Evening Being, I find I fall asleep a lot quicker, have less haunting dreams, and wake up feeling unusually refreshed and ready to face the day. Click the link in the description or head over to ver.so and use coupon code UnHerd at checkout to save 15% on your first order.
I'm going to start, if I could, by quoting the very first sentence of your essay to you, because I thought it's not strictly about the sex question yet, but it's such an interesting concept. If intelligent extraterrestrial beings ever visit us, what common ground shall we find for conversation, you write? Science, of course. Overwhelmingly science. Very probably nothing but science and mathematics. What do you mean by that?
All the things that preoccupy us as humans, sociology, history and things like that, will mean nothing to them. But they will have to be scientists or they couldn't get here. They will have to have physics, they'll have to have mathematics, they'll have to have the same physics and mathematics as we have, only probably much more advanced, although they couldn't get here. And so that's the only thing we can have in common to talk about.
And this is relevant to our conversation today, because the principle of the War on Science collection of essays that is coming out this week is that position of science as the kind of unassailable grounds for truth has been very much battered in recent years.
Yes, science is true and was true before there were any humans to appreciate it, and will be true long after we've gone extinct. So science is eternal. Science is universal. It applies all over the universe and for all time, and that puts it in perspective, puts our own petty human preoccupations in perspective.
Some people might listen to that and they will be thinking we're about to have a discussion of religion. And I can reassure them that we're not. We have actually discussed that before, and that's not what this conversation is about. Instead, it's about the idea that the academy, formal academic science, has in recent years become kind of infected by the contagion of the culture wars. Do you think that has happened across the sciences? I mean, how big do you think the problem has been?
Yes, I think it's pretty big. The leading journals of science like Nature and Scientific American have all been infected in the way that you say. You were talking earlier about the alleged continuum between the sexes. Biology especially is full of continua. I mean, we have a continuum of height and weight and colour and all kinds of things. I even wrote an essay once called The Tyranny of the Discontinuous Mind. But the one place where there is discontinuity is sex. It's just about the only one I can think of, actually, where we really do have a complete and utter binary, male, female.
So let's get into what that actually means. How would you define the male versus the female?
Throughout the whole of the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, there is one universal distinction between male and female, and that is gamete size. We have tiny, numerous gametes, which we call sperms. We have large and few gametes, which we call eggs, and that is universal.
Gametes, just to clarify, gametes are the cells we use to reproduce.
These are the sex cells, so sperms or eggs. That's universal, and there are no intermediates. There are isogametes, which are intermediates, but they don't occur in animals or plants. They occur in fungi and algae. But for the whole of the evolution of animals, for the whole of the evolution of plants, there is this complete discontinuity between macrogametes and microgametes, eggs and sperms.
So nature has just evolved in this binary system where half of the living things of a given species are producing these large gametes,
yes,
eggs, and half of them roughly are producing
yes. There's even a rather good mathematical theory of how it came about. If you start with isogamy, which means equal gametes, it's an economic argument. In order to make a viable zygote, in order to make a viable embryo, you need to the parents need to provide a certain amount of goods, food actually. And in isogamy, both parents provide the same amount. So it's a fair contribution, equal. Mathematical models show this is unstable. You start with isogamy and you run away in evolution to anisogamy, which means this unequal partitioning, where we can kind of call them sex now, where one sex has gone in the direction of producing millions and millions of small gametes, and the other sex has gone in the direction of producing few large gametes, starting with isogamy, moving towards anisogamy in evolutionary time.
There's actually a sort of practical reason for there being a division between the sexes, even at that cellular level.
Yes.
One sex produces these large eggs that have lots of nutrition in them, and so have a high chance of reaching maturity, or higher chance.
Yes.
And the other sex, what we call the male sex, produces many, many millions of these, or much more numerous numbers of these cells, which would on their own have a much less...
Would have no chance
would have no chance of survival, but they have their contribution, as it were, is just huge numbers.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, but to any one zygote, it's just one sperm. So there's this great economic inequality. You could say that the male sex is exploiting the female sex, so one way of putting it. But it has very interesting consequences. If you look right the way around the animal kingdom, you'll find that this economic imbalance plays out in the form of, you could make predictions, they all come out true. I think in this paper I listed 14 things that follow from this inequality. It's an economic inequality.
So they actually lead, and I'm going to get you to read out those 14 things, because I thought they were so kind of conclusive. But just before we do that, are there behavioral sort of correlations? One is almost tempted to start reading into the fact that the females produce fewer eggs that are better nourished as a sort of sign of how they might be behaviorally different, and men with a more sort of profligate sense of...
Well, yes. I mean, this is one of the... I suppose that's probably one of the 14, in fact. Males can benefit by mating with lots of females if they can get away with it, whereas females are much more likely to be concerned for the welfare of each one of their precious eggs, because they are economically so much more valuable. The female sex is the economically valuable sex.
So actually, I don't think it's widely thought of or understood that there's almost really a cellular explanation for those behavioral differences that you could say we even see in the human species.
Yes, I mean, you see it in lots of species. You see it in peacocks, you see it in birds of paradise, you see it in all sorts of things where one of the sexes tends to be promiscuous. It is almost always the male. When one of the sexes is fussy about who they mate with, it's almost always the female.
Let's go through these 14.
Okay.
Dawkins' 14 laws of sex difference.
1. In mammals, it's the females that gestate the young and secrete milk. 2. In those bird species where only one sex incubates the eggs, or only one sex feeds the young, it's nearly always the females. There are many birds where both do it, but where one does it, it's the females.
It's the female.
Usually. 3. In those fish that bear live young, it's nearly always the females that bear them. 4. In those animals where one sex advertises to the other with bright colours, it's nearly always the males.
The presence of nearly in some of these sentences, is that grounds for those people who want to oppose this
really?
binary?
I mean, they probably think it is, but you have to stick in the nearly. But I mean, scientists are always a little bit cautious about making generalizations, so that you can always find an exception. I mean, in this particular case, for example, phalaropes, it's the females that do the advertising, but they're a kind of one-off.
Right.
5, in those bird species where one sex sings elaborate or beautiful songs, it's the male that does so.
That one, I'm not sure that one would necessarily observe in the human species.
No, you wouldn't. Humans are odd in all sorts of ways. I prefer to stay away from humans if possible. We are a very unusual species.
Number 6.
In those animals where one sex fights over possession of the other, it is nearly always the males who fight. 7, in those animals where one sex has... This one is almost obvious to many people. They just know it's a fact. But the fact is that these all hang together for good theoretical reasons. In those animals where one sex has more promiscuous tendencies than the other, it is nearly always the males. 8, in those animals where one sex is fussier about avoiding miscegenation, it's usually the females.
What is miscegenation in this context?
Well, mating with the wrong species, for example, or mating with a sibling. If you're the female, you're the possessor of a precious commodity. You mustn't waste it by mating with the wrong species. If you're a male, your sperm is not precious. If you mate with the wrong species, what the hell, it doesn't matter. You haven't lost the economic goods. 9, in those animals where one sex tries to force the other into copulation, it is nearly always the males who do the forcing. 10, when one sex guards the other against copulation with others, it is nearly always the males that guard females. 11, in those animals where one sex is gathered into a harem, it is nearly always the females. 12, polygyny is more common than polyandry. That means one male, many females is more common than one female, many males. 13, when one sex tends to die younger than the other, it is usually the males.
That's also true in the human species.
Yes, that is true in humans.
Is that related to their different reproductive roles?
It kind of is. Because males have a lot to gain by getting their genes into the next generation in a hurry, because they have all these sperms, and they can, if they can get away with lots of matings in their young days, they will do so. So males tend to put a lot of effort into reproducing when they're young. This is because they sound contradictory with females, because we have the menopause, which sounds contradictory, but I'll come to that. Where there's a difference, males tend to invest a lot of effort in great reproductive productivity when they're young, and this shows itself not just in behavior but in health and things like that. If a male has a genetic tendency to die when he's middle-aged, that's okay, because he's done a lot of reproducing beforehand, or he has a good chance of having done so. Successful males are the ones who have managed to do a lot of reproducing before they die. Females, having the scarcer, more economically valuable gametes, gain by living a long time rather than getting all their reproducing done when they're young.
Because they need a longer period of time to have a decent number of children.
Yes, that's right. Now, the menopause, at first sight, sounds contradictory to that, and it is. And the menopause has a special explanation. One good explanation for it is that there comes a point when the fitness of a female is such that she can do her genes more good by taking care of grandchildren than by taking care of children. So there's this crossover point where if you're a female, you can benefit your genes more by looking after your grandchildren than by looking after children. So when you reach that crossover point, you cut off your reproduction. But that's a peculiarity of humans. And 14, when one sex is larger than the other, it's usually the males.
Just to return to the menopause idea, because that is also feels like it reads across very much to humans in terms of the way they behave. So are you saying there was no menopause? Is menopause universal across the species?
No, it's not. No.
You really do observe that in human society, don't you? That the mothers often take a very active role in their own children's children. You know, there is a sort of very...
in their grandchildren.
Yeah, yes. There is a very distinct role for grandmothers.
Yes.
Do you think that's fair to say in human society? I'm sure there's a distinct role for grandfathers as well. But
Yes. That's the point. That would be a plausible, at least, evolutionary Darwinian explanation for the menopause, which otherwise contradicts number 13.
Do you have grandchildren?
Yes.
Do you think that you are in any way less good of a grandfather than their grandmother is a grandmother?
No.
So
let's talk about humans.
But this is this is what the essay is about. This is where it gets so powerful, because I think you read these rules and so many of them sound like they are describing the human species.
Yes, they do.
That's kind of the power of this argument, that these ideas are not social constructs. They have roots in biology.
I would say the power is that they apply to all animals, and humans are animals, so we're not exceptional.
If I'm a grandfather listening to this and I'm thinking, Richard Dawkins sounds very sensible about this, but I'm a very good grandfather, no better than my wife. What's he on about?
I'm sure you are.
What would you say to them?
I would say, don't take Darwinian theorizing personally.
You write about in this piece, what's happened in recent years is that these underlying fundamentals of all life have come into question even in academic discourse. I mean, one example that you talk about is the American Medical Association, that actually laid it down in their so-called best practice documentation that it should be taught that sex and gender were social constructs.
Yes.
How did that even happen, and how seriously should we take it?
It's so absurd. I mean, as I think I said in the essay, if ever I have a doctor who gives me a full physical examination and then asks me what sex I am, I'd ask for another doctor, or ask for a more thorough examination. For doctors to be taught this nonsense is really very sad.
We had here in the UK our very own leader of the Liberal Democrat Party, Sir Ed Davey, who was on record saying that, this is a quote, "Women can quite clearly have a penis."
Yes.
What does he mean, do you think? Or should we even bother trying to work it out?
I don't want to excuse it, but I think what he kind of meant was, legally speaking, because the law is an ass, not that he would have said that, but because the law is an ass, women were defined as including men who want to be women. And therefore, on that legalistic interpretation of the meaning of the word woman, a woman can have a penis. The fact that it's an absurd legalistic interpretation, he may have gone along with it, probably did go along with it, but I think if you're asking me what he meant, that probably is what he meant.
So some people who have some knowledge of biology will challenge this idea of an absolute binary. And there are various kind of counterexamples and complexifying theories that they will throw at you. I just wanted to try a couple out and see what your response is. So one example that you mention is seahorses. The male gives birth.
Yes.
How does that square with the sex
it's an
binary?
Interesting exception. The male, by definition, as the microgamete producer, gets pregnant. Now, you're at liberty to define the female sex as the one who gets pregnant, in which case it becomes a tautology that female seahorses get pregnant. But if you adopt what I call the universal biological definition, which is the gamete size, then it is the male who gets pregnant. And that's interesting. That's an anomalous fact, which requires explanation. That requires somebody to do a thesis on it and answer the question, why does the male get pregnant. The male defined as the microgamete producer.
Another example that people who are engaged in the kind of culture war around sex and gender like to quote is clownfishes. These are fish that apparently change sex during their life.
Yes.
If they can do it, why can't we?
Yes, they're sequential hermaphrodites. There are plenty of hermaphrodites around the animal kingdom, snails and earthworms and things, and they are producers of both kinds of gametes. So they have both testes and ovaries. They produce both sperms and eggs. They're hermaphrodites. Anemone fishes, clownfishes, are sequential hermaphrodites. They produce sperms at one time of life and then eggs at a later time of life. There are other sequential hermaphrodites that do it the other way around. They're still hermaphrodites. They are capable of doing both, and they do it at different times of their life. That does not violate the universal biological definition, which is based upon gamete size.
So just to spell that out for anyone who is following this, it does not follow from the fact that hermaphrodite clownfishes can change their which types of gamete they produce.
Yes.
That humans can go from being male to female.
So-called transsexual humans are not hermaphrodites. They don't suddenly start producing eggs when previously they produce sperms, vice versa. If that doesn't happen.
There are, or this I should phrase as a question, is it true that there can be hermaphrodite humans? Because this is also something you hear. And there was one study at one point that you referenced that came up with a figure of 1.7% of humans have some kind of hermaphrodite
that's wrong.
tendency.
That's just plain wrong. I mean, the true figure is 0.08%. But even that's an exaggeration. No human produces isogametes. No human produces intermediate-sized gametes. As for the number of babies that are born of dubious sex, something that's not obvious to a doctor, whether they're male or female, they're very, very rare. I mean, I tried to plot a bar chart, a histogram of the number of unambiguous males as one bar and unambiguous females, and I realized you couldn't do it on paper because the numbers are so huge. I worked out that if you represented the number of male babies by one of the New York Twin Towers, and that's
in terms of the volume of the building,
of the height of the building,
right,
and the female babies by the other twin tower, how big would be the ones in the middle, the so-called hermaphrodites? The answer is a molehill.
These hermaphrodites, human hermaphrodites, do they contain both sex organs, and are they capable of producing both large and small gametes?
I don't know. I mean, there are various different sorts of creature which are humans who are called, they prefer the name intersex, I think, rather than hermaphrodite nowadays. But they're not hermaphrodites in the sense that clownfish are or earthworms are.
They're not producing both kinds of cells.
They're not producing viable sperms and eggs.
So with that approach, how do you treat so-called transsexuals, which is what this whole societal battle has been about? Men who are born into a male body, but who are convinced that they are a woman trapped inside a man's body.
Yes,
or the vice versa.
It's a kind of dualism. They've got a soul, they've got a female soul inside a male body.
That may be how they experience life.
Well, I mean, it's a matter of politeness. If they want to be called she, then who am I to be rude to them? I mean, I would respect their preferences. What I would not respect is their right to walk into a woman's changing room or into a woman's sporting event, and especially if they use their male strength to walk off with female medals.
How should we understand it then? Is it a disorder? Is it a psychological condition? Is it just a fashion of society?
It's clearly a fashion, there's no doubt about that. I mean, there may be a disorder underlining it, but what's happening at the moment is a vogue, a craze. It's just like a school playground craze.
So you think it will fade away, do you?
I think it already is, yes.
That's the crucial question I want to end with, where you think we are on this battle, because you've described very clearly what the biology is, hasn't changed in the last 5 or 10 or 15 years. It remains as true as it was. But the thinking has changed. Do you feel we have turned a corner in some way? Do you feel, with all of the recent High Court decision here in the UK and so on, that there is a revenge of sanity on this question?
I don't like the word revenge, but yes, I think we've turned a corner, and yes, I think we're getting back to sanity.
There's a quote that you put here in this essay, in fact two, from two media outlets, respected publications, that during this confusion, and it's just a small example, I should say, there are lots of these, actually have to describe males as with the female pronouns. I'm going to just read them out. This is in the Bournemouth Daily Echo. She is accused of 4 counts of engaging in sexual activity in the presence of a child and 2 counts of exposure, where she intentionally exposed her penis.
Her penis.
Intending someone would see it and cause alarm or distress. Yeah, so that's the Bournemouth Daily Echo. And this from the Times of London, supposedly the newspaper of record in Britain, January the 18th, 2023, so not very long ago. A transgender woman has denied raping 2 women with her penis as she went on trial at the High Court in Glasgow. So I'm quoting those back at you really just to challenge this sense that sanity is returning, because that was 2023, it wasn't very long ago. This thinking really went very, very deep.
Yes,
and wide.
That was before the High Court decision, and I think before the Cass report as well, probably.
You think, let's just get the prediction on record for us here, that were we to have this conversation in 2 or 3 years' time, let's say, the United States will have caught up with the UK on those clearing up those definitions?
Well, the United States, I mean, under Trump, loathsome as he is, only decent thing he's ever done, I think, is to start in the right direction on this matter of sex differences.
I think there's a whole other conversation to have about Donald Trump. We'll leave that for another day. Richard Dawkins, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.